Yes, yes, yes.
Good morning. My name is Isaac Akumia Frimpong from Western Sydney University, a PhD candidate. I'm presenting on holistic review of public-private partnership projects in Ghana. Public-private partnership, in short, or normally called PPP projects. So this is the table of contents for this presentation. In this presentation, there is introduction, problem statement, aim and objectives, significance of the study, research methodology, results, and conclusions. So I'll start with the introduction. Public-private partnership has become very popular, or has become well known all over the world. And it has been used to deliver a number of infrastructural projects all over the world. But there is no one common definition for what a public-private partnership project is. So therefore, it is defined differently by researchers, governments, and global organizations or institutions. They all have different definitions as to what a public-private partnership is. But there are common features. In other words, even though they define them differently, but there are common features which are very unique to the PPP projects or the PPP partnership. The first one has to do with the key partners. So in every definition of public-private partnership, you will see the key partners being the public sector, which is the government, and then the private sector, which is the private institutions, private investors, and then also private financiers. Then another common feature that you get to know or you see on PPP projects is sharing of risk, responsibilities, profit, and losses. So in all the definitions and explanations about public-private partnership, you will see that normally they put in the sharing of risk, responsibilities, profit, and losses about the project, because as I said, it's a partnership. Then another thing too is that normally it is the responsibility of the private partner to design the project, finance the project, build the project, operate the project for a number of years, which we normally call the concession period. So let's say the concession period can be, there are even organizations and institutions who are given 100 years to operate a project, like a road or a mega infrastructural project. Some of them 50 years, some of them 10 years, some of them 20 years. So that period of that number of years are normally called concession period. And once the time is due or the time is over, normally the project is transferred back to the government. So it becomes the property of the government. In other words, the government becomes the one who operates or manage it. With a public partner, which in this case is the government acts as an enabler and facilitator of the project in terms of supervision, in terms of documentation, in terms of the legal framework and other things to make sure that the project becomes successful. So over the years, that means for the past almost about 30 years, starting from 1990, looking at the data available, it shows that PPP has really become an acceptable measure or tool to deliver infrastructural projects, especially in developing economies. So if you look at this data I've presented, starting from 1990 to 2019, you can see an increased investment. That's the total investment, billions of dollars in PPP project. And this data was taken from World Bank's PPI project database as of January 2020. So you can see that kind of increase starting from 1990, then moving to 2008, 2009, going upwards 2019, and it keeps on increasing. So it has really gained a global acceptance, this approach. So as I made mention of, it has become very common, it has become very acceptable in developing countries. And one of these developing countries, which I'm using in this study, is Ghana. So Ghana, as a developing country, has also accepted to use this approach. Currently, the population growth rate is 2.5 in Ghana. In other words, the number of people living in Ghana is increasing, because if you compare the number of people living in Ghana in the year 2000, which was around 18 million, currently Ghana boasts a population figure of almost about 31 million. And it is expected that in the year 2050, Ghana will have a total population of close to about 50 million people. But one issue or one challenge that the government of Ghana has been facing is infrastructural projects. Because with this increased number of people, you need infrastructural projects to meet their daily needs. So as a way to help the government of Ghana to meet these needs, because left to the government of Ghana alone, you cannot deliver all the infrastructural projects. And one of the reasons why the government cannot do that is that the government budget is limited in terms of giving attention to all other areas or all other sectors of the economy. Because aside infrastructure, the government is also supposed to meet other needs of other sectors of the economy. So in order to meet this infrastructural gap, which has been estimated to be 3.2 billion annually for the next decade, the government has also adopted this approach, or this to deliver infrastructural projects. Another issue is that since the government adopted a project, the government didn't adopt this approach just last year. The government adopted this approach in the year 2008. And since the government adopted this approach, what has also been seen is that in terms of skills, in terms of understanding, in terms of knowledge of the PPP, people have not really come to understand the whole concept, especially in the context of Ghana, very well. And then also issues of financial risk and poor project management leads to project failures. So looking at all these things, I've decided to concentrate this study, or I concentrated the study on Ghana. So the problem statement is, despite multiple PPP studies conducted in Ghana, there has been an insufficient attention on outlining the framework and development of trends of PPP research. Also, existing studies in PPP in Ghana focus on specific cases, leaving the wider scope crossing industries unattended to. With that, my main aim is to review studies on public-private partnership projects. And in doing that, to help me to address or to establish trends in the annual publications on PPP projects, starting from 1990 to the year 2020. And then I have also examined the active contributors to the studies on PPP projects in Ghana. I've also assessed the PPP projects in Ghana and research methodologies adopted by previous studies. Also, I've reviewed the relevant issues on PPP projects, and I've also highlighted the research gaps and future research direction of PPP project. So why this study? The study is important because in terms of policy, a lot of things need to be done or to be known for policymakers in terms of developing legal framework and document to guide the PPP market. And then also conceptualizing the relevant issues for project managers. It seems that currently the PPP studies, like, they all take their own approach and their own role, and people tackle the issue differently. So with this study, project managers will get relevant issues which they need to tackle to make sure that their projects run successfully. This study will also broaden the scope of research studies on PPP projects, not only in Ghana, but drawing relevant lessons from other countries. It will also help. And once it is done, other countries which are similar to Ghana, because Ghana share a lot of similarities with other countries, developing countries. So once this study is done, future researchers can also adopt important things from this study to aid their study. So this is the research methodology I used. So the research approach, I used a bibliometric review, or this study is a bibliometric review. So I combined both the systematic. Bibliometric review normally have two main approaches. That's the systematic and then the scientometric. I'll show the systematic, how I went about the systematic very soon. With the scientometric, I use a software called Voice Viewer software. Voice Viewer software. For those of you who want to get additional information about Voice Viewer, maybe another day, another time, you can contact me, and then we'll go deeper into it. And then data analysis techniques. Here I use the content analysis. Content analysis has to do with reading or doing an in-depth reading of the papers and then picking relevant issues from the papers. And cluster analysis here has to do with grouping important relevant issues together to make analysis. And these approaches have been used by a lot of previous studies in the PPP market. So this is the systematic approach I made mention of. With the systematic approach, what I did was that there are so many ways by which you can go about searching for papers. I mean, research papers, peer review, acceptable articles to undertake your studies. So with this study, I chose Scopus. We have Scopus, we have Web of Science, we have Google Scholar, SciScope, SciScore, and others. But in this study, I used Scopus because Scopus gave me a wider range of papers. If you compare, for example, if you compare, or if I compare the Scopus gave me over 100 papers. Scopus was able to retrieve over 100 papers for me, while something like Web of Science gave me around 48, 50 papers. So all things being equal, the Scopus gave me a wider scope, or it gave me a wider net for me to get papers to review for this study. And so Scopus search with AAK. The AAK in this case is the abstract, the article title, and then the keywords. So I put in the keywords, and the keywords I put in here is public-private partnership, PPP. Another name for PPP is BOT, which is build, operate, and transfer. Another name for BOT is build, operate, and transfer. Others are build, finance, and transfer, and so forth and so forth. There are so many other names that can be used for public-private partnerships. So I put in the keywords, and with the search, when I searched, the initial outcome unfiltered Filtered means I have not sorted anything out, or I have not taken things out of it. The initial search gave me an outcome of 130 papers. Out of the 130 papers, I did some sorting. I took some things out. Based on, when it comes to your right-hand side, you see based on one, journal articles. So some of them were books, some of them were conference papers, some of them were reviews and other things. But my concentration as far as this study is journal articles, peer review articles. I limited the search to English language, and also I limited the search period to for others from 1990 to 2020. So the outcome gave me 101 papers, and then I did a further limitation again, or sorting again. I scanned through the abstract. Out of the 101 papers, I scanned through means I just read through the abstract of the keywords. And that led me to a final 61 papers that I downloaded from Scopus. Then from Scopus, that's the stage 2. Then I moved to stage 2. From Scopus, I read through the 61 papers. That's the in-depth reading and analysis, the content analysis of the 61 papers. So I took my time, I read through, and did a reading I mean from the introduction to the conclusion or limitation of each of the papers. And that led me to getting 53 papers, relevant papers out of the 61. And these papers were selected based on papers which were relevant in relation to the research objectives, this research objective. Because even though some of the papers, the 61 papers, some of them were okay, they have some items or issues concerning PPP, which are relating to Ghana, but they were not helping me to meet the research objective. Therefore, I needed to take them out. So finally, I got 53 relevant papers for this study. So these 53 papers, this is what I did, and that led me to the results and discussion, which I will move to that stage very soon. So I grouped the important issues into background analysis of the relevant papers. With the background analysis of the papers, I look at the annual publications. That's the trend in the annual publication of these 53 papers. And then the second thing was the key issues on PPP projects. So in Ghana, what are the researchers saying, or what are the important issues that the researchers are talking about? So I did that, and then I took research gaps, the limitations, or some of the things that the researchers think that they need to be further developed in future studies. And then I also added the future research direction. So coming to the results and discussion, the first one is the annual publication. So if you look at the 53 papers, you can see that there is an upward positive growth in the annual publications of studies in PPP project, which is an indication that the issue of PPP project is becoming very important in the Ghanaian infrastructural projects when it comes to the delivery of infrastructural projects in Ghana. So, because if you look at an example from the year 2012, you can see from 2013, 2014, 2016, 2017, 6, 2018, 9, you can see that kind of increase, which is an indication that the government, policymakers, project managers, they are increasingly accepting the concept of PPP project in delivery of infrastructural project. Then these are the key contributors to the studies of PPP projects in Ghana, contributors to studies on PPP projects in Ghana. So with the contributors, I look at the contributors from 3 angles. The first one has to do with the authors. The second one has to do with the institutions, and the last one has to do with the countries. So I'm looking at the countries that contribute a lot to studies, researchers on PPP projects in Ghana. Then who are the authors? The authors are the researchers. And then the institutions, which institutions, research centers are contributing to the studies on PPP projects in Ghana. So the vote viewer, this is what I got. So if you look at the author, you can look at somebody like Oseche, Robert Oseche. He's a key prominent researcher when it comes to PPP projects in Ghana. Then there's Albert Chan. He's also a key. Albert Chan is in Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Oseche Robert is in Western Sydney University. And then we have Ifa Amiao. Then we have and others. So these are the key, also Menu and Co. These are the key people or the key researchers who are into PPP projects in Ghana. So that's another, this is just the visual, the density visualization. And then this is also another visualization. It's almost the same thing, just that this one shows the nodes. So in other words, this one will give you the researchers with the bigger node. The bigger node are the ones with a lot of studies or researchers who have published a lot of studies on PPP projects in Ghana. So Oseche, Danso, Frimpong, Robert, Chan, Ameyao, Usumenu, and Co. These people contribute a lot to the PPP projects in Ghana. So these are the institutions. The institutions are where mostly the researchers are based or where studies are conducted on PPP projects in Ghana. Schools like Hong Kong Polytechnic University is a key contributor when it comes to PPP projects in Ghana. Western Sydney University, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, which is in Ghana. Then we have Chuan University, then University Technology Sydney. These schools also have them here. You can see Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Western Sydney University, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Chuan University, Kumasi Technical University, University of Technology Sydney, University of Ghana, University of Bern, which is in Switzerland, and the University of Johannesburg, which is in South Africa. These schools are institutions where researchers write a lot about PPP projects in Ghana. When it comes to the countries, these are the countries. So most of the studies or most of the researchers are based in Ghana. Some are based in Australia, and some are based in China. These are the three key countries from where PPP projects studies on PPP projects are written. Now let's come to the relevant issues. With the relevant issues from the papers, I also grouped them into 6. The first one has to do with the research methodology adopted by previous studies, then the types of PPP projects in Ghana, the struggling or failed PPP project, financing and risk, critical success factors, performance of PPP project. These are the relevant issues. If you take all the 53 papers, these are the relevant issues. So the first one has to do with the research methodology. The one that came on top when it comes to the research methodology adopted by previous studies on PPP projects in Ghana is case studies. Most of the studies use case studies. Case studies with mathematical or statistical models, most of them. And then the second one was expert opinion, with literature. And the next one was survey. And last one was a hybrid, a mixed method. When it comes to the project type, most of the studies use what I call generic studies. Generic studies means these studies look at projects from different angles. In other words, a situation where a study will cover about 3 different projects. For example, a project about health or a project in the health industry, at the same time, a project in the transport. The transport, that's something like a road. So one study, you see roads, you see hospitals, you see buildings at the same time. They are called the generic or general studies. And then we have specific studies which concentrated on roads, and specific studies which concentrated on buildings, airports, railway, urban redevelopment and sports facilities, water, and then disaster safety net. The next one, the next issue that I also I picked from the studies is the struggling of failed PPP projects. I realize that some of the PPP projects are struggling, and these are some of the examples that I've presented here. So the ministry, that's the government, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, Transport, Water Resources and Works and Housing, Youth and Sports, Trade and Industry, Health, Defense, they have adopted PPP projects, but the project that they have undertaken or is currently on, some of them are currently ongoing, some of them they have also completed them. Most of them are struggling, and the reason why they are struggling, that will lead me to the finance and risk of PPP projects. Most of the projects are struggling because of these issues. That's what I found out. One of them is interest risk, construction costs, cost overruns, operation and maintenance costs, limited capital funds, revenue risk, and termination costs. These things really are affecting the progress of the project. And in most of the cases, some of the projects have even been abandoned because of high construction costs, because of limited capital or funds to continue the project. Critical success factors. In order to make sure that the PPP projects in Ghana succeed, these are some of the issues I identify in the literature from the 53 papers that they suggested could help PPP projects in Ghana to succeed. So effective management of project costs, access to project capital, sound corporate governance, strategic finance, alliance, robust macroeconomic policies, and others. So these things were suggested by researchers that if these things are put in place, the PPP project will succeed. Another area that I also took information from is about the performance of PPP projects. So these are what the studies are saying about performance of PPP project. So I look at the performance criteria, how the performance criteria is described, and then the measurement of the performance. So one of them is favorable rate of return, cost efficiency, adherence to or adhere to budget, positive NPV, sharing of profit, economic development. Okay, to end everything, this will be the last but one, is the conceptualization of the findings. So the conceptualization of my findings. So in order to conceptualize my findings, I just adopted the life cycle approach of a project. Life cycle approach of a project means starting from the conception of the project to the design of the project, to the building of the project, to the operation of the project, to the transfer of the project, to even discarding the whole project off in the long run. So at the conception stage, what I identified was that it's good for project managers to identify stakeholders. The reason why they need to identify stakeholders is that stakeholders play a very important role in the success of PPP project. So project managers must identify the key stakeholders at the conception stage. Who are the ones going to be affected by the PPP project? Because there are instances when I was reading the papers, I got to know that people or communities rise up against PPP projects because sometimes the community is not consulted. For example, a road is going to be constructed in, let's say, Kingswood, and the people in Kingswood are not consulted. They get up one day and a road is being started or being constructed. They will rise up and demonstrate against such moves. Okay, so it's important that project managers consult stakeholders, but they can only consult them once, only when they know them. Then the same thing must also be done with all the other stages. In addition, other issues that must also be done is management of communication, update and management of concern of conflict, manage relationships and knowledge. Once these things are done, PPP projects are going to be very successful. To conclude, I have some of the gaps I identified. Social impact assessment is lacking. For holistic financial risk management is lacking. Effective monitoring and supervision of PPP projects is lacking. Because of that, a lot of the projects are failing. Yeah, the projects are failing. And then knowledge management methods for PPP projects has also not been considered or has not been delved into in Ghana. Big data analytics and economic shocks, like unexpected events like COVID-19, there are no measures to control such moves. Sustainability of PPP projects has to be improved, and then improved methodology for flexible contracting. These issues must be addressed, if PPP projects are going to succeed. Conclusion. To conclude, what I realized was that most of the studies covered general projects. General project in this case, I mean projects or studies that covered more than 2 projects at the same time. Then case studies is the dominant research methodology. Then poor supervision and risk management have led to failure of most of the projects in Ghana. And then there's also limited conceptualization of issues when it comes to PPP projects. Thank you very much for the opportunity. If you have any question, I'm ready to also help you with.
Much appreciated, Isaac. Really interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you.
I was wondering about the way that you've conducted the literature review.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions about how could you confirm that the data that you've extracted from Scopus were actually the articles that were somehow referring to Ghana? I mean, is there?
Yeah, I get it. To do that, one of the keywords in Scopus that I keyed in is the name Ghana. Yeah, the name Ghana. Then after I downloaded the papers to
keyword as for Ghana in the Scopus, and then plus some other keywords, and then the software somehow extracted all the
aside the keywords on public-private partnership, which is the PPP.
Okay.
Additional keyword I added is the word Ghana. So that so I limited the thing to Ghana. That's one of the keywords, so that I will get exact papers from Ghana, because PPP has been done in so many other countries. So in order to be very specific, I added Ghana so that the search will be limited to Ghana. Then after I downloaded the papers, as I said, I did a content analysis. Content analysis means I read the papers from introduction to the end. Because what I realized is that sometimes somebody will even conduct a study in a country like Australia or USA, and then maybe he would just mention Ghana somewhere as a reference or something. Something will come in and then you just mention Ghana. But the study is not about Ghana, but he just mentioned Ghana. So what I did was that I read through the papers and I took those ones that just mentioned the name Ghana out. That's why from the 61, I reduced the whole thing to 53. Because I realized that some of the papers, even though they were done in other countries like Australia, USA, UK, Germany, they mentioned the name Ghana, but actually the study was not about Ghana.
I see. Yes.
So that's what I did. Yeah.
Okay, so you already answered my next question, which was about how many how many papers you investigated, which was 60, and then it was reduced to 57. You said.
Come again.
Yep. All right.
I didn't get your question. Can you come again?
Nothing. I was actually trying to ask how many papers have you investigated, and you already answered that.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Thank you.
All right. Again, much appreciated.
Yeah, you're welcome.
To see everybody in the next sessions.